Starting from tomorrow, residents of over 60 municipalities will pay more for electricity. It comes after the High Court in Pretoria on Friday excluded some municipalities on the basis that the National Energy Regulator of South Africa did not follow its own methodology. The court ordered that only those municipalities that had done cost of supply studies were entitled to an electricity tariff increase. To look at what all this means, I am joined by Professor Sampson Mamphweli, who is the head of the Energy Secretariat at the South African National Energy Development Institute. Professor Mamphweli, a pleasure to have you on the program. Firstly, let's get your initial reaction to Eskom's proposed electricity tariff increase of 36.15% for 2025. How do you foresee this significant increase affecting South African households and businesses, particularly those relying on municipal electricity supply?
Yeah, good afternoon to you and the viewers. Firstly, I don't believe that NERSA will grant that application in its entirety. This is the biggest that we have seen in all the Eskom applications. However, I must indicate that Eskom is normally spot on when it comes to these kind of applications in terms of the following the formula and also looking at the cost of generation and looking at how they can recover such cost. In most cases, NERSA would then go through a public participation process, and they will also look into the application internally because they've got experts in these tariffs, and then also look at the Eskom operations and look at what else can be done to try and avoid such massive electricity tariff hikes. In some cases, they've identified inefficiencies in the operations of Eskom, resulting in them granting lesser tariff increases. And when Eskom comes back after a year of operation, they are allowed to submit what we call the regulatory clearing account, which basically says to NERSA, this is what you have approved, and this is how much it costed us to produce electricity, and then they add the allowable kind of profit, and then they are allowed to recover the cost of generation in the previous financial year. So I don't believe that they will get the 36% tariff hikes. I think it's gonna go down to something between 15 and 18% after NERSA has gone through their various processes. But I would like to encourage the public to participate in that process as well, because in the main, it's mainly experts who are participating and the general public does not necessarily participate.
Right. So considering the history of electricity tariff increases over the past few years, what do you think are the long-term implications of these continuous hikes on the economy, but also on consumers as well?
Yeah, the impact is quite massive and on the negative side of things, because electricity is the primary input into the economy in terms of the production. If you go to mines and all the factories, that's where they use electricity to produce the goods, and also on the commercial side to provide services. So any increase on the electricity tariff side of things, it's normally passed on to consumers by industry. So the cost of living basically goes higher because the industry then passes over that particular price hikes to the consumers, and it affects other things such as your inflation and other things which negatively affect the economy. However, I must indicate that for the longest of time, South Africa's electricity tariffs have been very low. They've never been cost reflective, which is why Eskom had to rely mainly on government bailouts, and also in some cases they had to take huge loans that are coming back to haunt Eskom to cover for the deficit in terms of the revenue that they were collecting. That's why in most cases when they make this application, we see these double-digit numbers going forward. We are hopeful that with the government interventions such as your unbundling of Eskom and opening up the electricity market, allowing more role players to come on board, such as IPPs, that particular process will result in competition, and then that competition will result in a stable kind of electricity price or even lower electricity prices going forward.
Professor Mamphweli, I want to refer to a statement by SAFTU, the Trade Union Federation. It does highlight the history of mismanagement, corruption, and fiscal austerity as contributing factors to Eskom's financial struggles. How critical are these issues in the context of the proposed tariff increases?
So these are quite critical, and NERSA has also highlighted these in the past, indicating to Eskom that if they improve in terms of their operational efficiencies, if they improve in terms of dealing with the corruption and malfeasance and things like that, then they won't need these higher electricity prices. If you go back to the Zondo Commission, for instance, there's a chapter on the capture of Eskom that details in the Zondo Commission report that details how corruption affected Eskom with the new build program, for instance, with Medupi and Kusile, resulting in the cost of building those power stations escalating 3 times. And that also affects the electricity price, because when Eskom does their numbers in terms of the cost of generation, they include the cost of building Medupi and Kusile, they include any new generation capacity that Eskom would build. They also include the transmission development plan or the transmission development lines, which then results in these higher electricity price increases. But we've noticed that the levels of corruption have gone down since the intervention by the sixth administration under President Ramaphosa through the NICOM interventions as well.
With this in mind, how do the profit margins and tariff requests, for instance, of independent power producers, how do these influence Eskom's need to raise tariffs? And what role do they play in the overall energy market in the country?
So the IPPs, at the beginning, when we started with the IPP program as South Africa, their prices were quite high because the industry was not yet established in the country. We basically had to pay school fees at the beginning. But based on those high prices, which were basically worked into the tariffs as well, and based on that, we've now started reaping the benefits, because if you look at the REAP programs, the various bid windows from bid window 3 onwards, you can see the price drop drastically, going up to about 40 cents per kilowatt hour, on average, in terms of the responses that we get from the IPPs that are participating in this space. So the impact is still on the previous, on the original bids, bid window 1 and 2 in the main, but those are minimum compared to the benefits that we are reaping now. It could have been worse if we didn't invest then in the higher prices than what is happening at the moment.
Going back to SAFTU, they've also highlighted concerns about the privatization of power generation, but also the lack of genuine public-driven decarbonization plans. What are your views on the government's approach to call it privatization and its impact on the energy transition?
So what is important and what is key on that aspect is to look at Eskom themselves to say, is Eskom being privatized or not? And the answer to that question is no. Eskom is not being privatized. Eskom will remain a public entity. What is happening is that we are now going to have more role players. The electricity market is going to open so that we have security of electricity supply. We don't rely only on Eskom and a few IPPs. We rely on Eskom and a whole lot of other IPPs who can be readily available to provide us with electricity so that we have the security of supply of electricity going forward. So that for me is quite key. in terms of also reducing the electricity price, because once you open up the market, you introduce competition, and then due to that competition, we benefit from getting lower prices. NERSA is still going to be there as a regulatory body. They will still be regulating the electricity prices, especially where government and ESCOM is procuring this electricity. However, where the producers of the electricity come at a much cheaper prices, NERSA will allow those to go through, because NERSA is seized with protecting mainly those who cannot afford, and in the main protecting the poor as well. So there's no privatization of ESCOM as as opposed to what other people are saying out there. It is the private companies will be involved in terms of the broader electricity market, which will be beneficial to the South African public in general.
Professor Mamphweli, as we wrap up our conversation, municipalities often add, call it short charges to the electricity they supply to residents. How do these short charges contribute to the overall financial burden on consumers?
So those charges, when you have your distribution network and your transmission network, those networks, including the line that comes to your house and the meter that is installed in your house, all that have got its own costs associated with the maintenance of that infrastructure. So municipalities and ESCOM have to charge for them to be able to maintain that particular infrastructure. If they don't do that, then they run the risk of a situation where they will have cash flow problems. And once they start to have cash flow problems, they won't be able to maintain the same systems that are there to be able to provide this service to the nation. A typical example is load shedding, which was a result of a number of factors, but also including the fact that ESCOM did not have enough money to be able to maintain the coal fleet that has aged and that has not been properly maintained in the past, until recently, when the sixth administration gave ESCOM 256 billion and said to them, you can use this money to service your debt, and then you use your balance sheet to fix the coal fleet, which the results of which we are starting to see now, because now we see the coal fleet being properly maintained, and we see reliability when these systems are brought back to service. So that is a situation where the utilities need to recover this cost of maintenance of these systems so that they can be able to maintain them going forward.
Thanks again for joining us, Professor Mamphweli, and sharing your expertise and insights on ESCOM's proposed electricity tariff increase, but also speaking to the potential impact on South African consumers, but also small businesses as well. Think about them, or spare a thought for them.